everyone, today we're going to work on review lesson 3, which is evaluating expressions. So we're going to be able to answer the question of how do I evaluate for a variable in an expression. First, let's kind of fill in some blanks. So a variable is a symbol that is usually a letter that stands for an unknown number. So you might see something like 2x plus 4. The variable is right here. And to evaluate an algebraic expression means to find the value of it, given specific values for each term. Okay, so let's look a little bit further at what is an expression. So an expression is a combination of terms put together with operations. So in this case, we actually have two expressions and they're set equal to each other. So an expression does not have the equal sign. This whole thing put together is called an equation, but just this is called an expression, and just this is an expression. So the first expression that we have actually has two terms. It has a term that is this 5x is a term and this 7 is a term. Now each term has its own name. So a constant is where you have just a number. There's no letter connected to it. A variable is a letter, and then something called a coefficient is when you've got that number smashed next to the variable. And this means that we're multiplying. So you're actually saying, this right here is actually saying 5 times whatever the value of x is, whatever that is, plus 7. So it's telling you to use the order of operation. And then it just says down here that I have 3 terms. So how do I evaluate an expression? Sometimes you're given an expression like 5x plus 6 and you need to evaluate it. Evaluate just means simplify. And for example, it might say evaluate when x equals 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to use parentheses to isolate our variable. And just the variable, because if we were to have, let's say we had, let's say this was a negative and we had a negative over here, we would only want to put in this -4 in for just the x. Then we're going to substitute the given value for each variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in right there. So we're going to say -5 times 4. And then we're going to evaluate the expression using those order of operations. Don't forget, a number right next to a variable means to multiply. Okay, so let's give it a shot. We are going to evaluate the following expressions when A is 5 and B is 2. So what we're going to do, let's see. So we know that A is 5 and B is 2. So I am going to isolate my variable using parentheses. And then I'm going to replace my variable with the number that it is. And then I evaluate using order of operations. Easy enough. Let's go down and do C. First, I'm going to isolate both my variables with parentheses. Then I'm going to substitute. Then I'm going to evaluate using order of operations. I'm going to do this first and get 10 plus 2 plus 2 to get a total of 12. Why don't you go ahead and stop the video and do B and D. Come back and we'll do E together. All right, friends. When I substituted 2 in for B, I got 7. When I substituted 5 and 2 in, I got 10. Let's take a look at E. E's got a lot going on. We have a negative A, or the opposite of A, times 2 times B squared. So let's go ahead and isolate everything with parentheses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this and space everything out. And then I'm going to put just the letters in the parentheses. Now I'm going to substitute my A and B. A is 5 and B is 2. I'm going to put those right underneath. Then I'm going to fill in everything else. Notice I'm adding in some operations. I'm just reminding myself that these numbers need to be multiplied. Now in order of operations, we do parentheses or grouping symbols first. These grouping symbols have the simplest number inside of it. I can't simplify 2 or 5 anymore. So I don't need to worry about my parentheses, but I do need to worry about this exponent. This exponent of 2 squared turns this into a 4. I'm going to say, okay, I have a 4. Everything else is going to come down. Times 2, times 5, and then the opposite of. Now I just get to go through and do multiplication and division. Now, I have 2 multiplication problems here, so I can do it in any order. So I'm going to start with these 2 because they're both positive. 2 times 4 is 8. Everything else is going to come down. I then have negative 5 times 8, which is negative 40. Go ahead and give F a shot and come on back. All right, friends. If you got 13, you've done the problem correctly. If not, go back and check my work. You might have missed that there was this negative sign right here. Anyway, that's it. So don't forget that your practice is on Pearson Realize today. Do your best. You are amazing. If you have any other questions, see me on Zoom today. Have a good day.